Hello and welcome to another Hangout in the Earth Day series, Our Earth. We kicked off this week with an epic Earth, Air, Water Hangout with National Geographic, NASA, and Underwater Earth. Today we are continuing the conversation connecting experts from around the globe to discuss Earth Day and the major environmental issues impacting three core components of our environment. Today we are discussing reducing, reusing, and recycling as Hangout number 4 and 5 in the series. We are also joined by some experts and community in the field. You will obviously have the option to ask us any questions you want and interact with us using the comment box in the event on Google+. And at this point in time, I would like to go ahead and introduce our participants. And I guess for those of you that don't know me, I am Tim McDonald. I am the community manager at HuffPost Live, which is a live streaming network of the Huffington Post. I am also joined by Jennifer Giocopo from Earth 911. Jennifer, would you like to tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Hey Tim, nice to be here, and good job on the last name. I know it's tricky. That was awesome. So hi everyone, my name's Jennifer. I am the social media editor for Earth 911. We are the leading experts on living a low-waste lifestyle, and I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
And now we will go over to Hope from Mother Nature Network.
Hi folks, I'm Hope Lagozima over at the Mother Nature Network, and we are a sustainability website that covers responsible living and living a smart way and in a planet-friendly manner.
And now I will introduce Lisa Agostoni from Mother Nature Network.
That's right. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I work with Hope. I also do a social media and editing at Mother Nature Network, and we're excited to work with Earth 911 on this project.
Fantastic. And now we have Sara Snow with Mother Nature Network. How are you, Sara?
I'm great, thanks, Tim. I'm Sara Snow. I'm a sort of green living expert and a TV host. I've hosted a couple TV series for the Discovery Networks, for the Fine Living Channel, done a lot of work for CNN, written a book all to educate people on the simple steps they can take to living greener, healthier lives.
Fantastic. And next we have one of our other experts, Avital Andrews from Sierra Club. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, like you said, I'm from the Sierra Club, and I am the lifestyle editor of Sierra Magazine. Got a little prop here. And for the magazine, I cover green living topics and just how to make environmentalism fun. The Sierra Club's motto is explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. So my realm is kind of the enjoy aspect of it in terms of how to have fun living a greener life and being environmentally responsible and getting out into nature.
Well, excellent. Well, let me start off by maybe throwing our first question out to you, which is, why do you think waste is still such a big problem in the U.S.? The U.S. hovers around 30% recycling rate, but we throw out 40% of the food we buy.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is such a big problem here?
That's, such a complicated question. It reaches all the way into social psychology and spirituality, but I think it's just a really multifaceted problem. I think that we're, as a society, programmed for instant gratification, even from childhood, and it's just, we are just kind of used to getting what we want, and, I'm not a particularly religious person, but I think that the decline of spirituality, which generally leads people a little bit more toward moderation, is sort of creating this society where our fulfillment is not from the having of things, and we need to find our fulfillment in other places, including being in nature and human relationships, and those things are suffering in this digital age. A lot of people find fulfillment from material things these days. But again, it's complicated. It's different for everyone.
Well, and Sara, I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm a mom of a young child. I have a 2-year-old and I have another one on the way right now. Very soon I don't think it's going to happen in the next 40 minutes or so, but we'll see. But, you know, I look at things also as a mom and as a member of a family, and I think that Avital is totally right that we do too often find happiness in the things that we buy, but I think it also has a little bit to do with just our buying habits and our busy lives, and the fact, you know, when we talk about how much food we actually throw out, the fact that because our lives are so busy, so many families do their grocery shopping once a week or every other week, and they go to these big box stores and they buy mass quantities of food at once instead of the old way of buying what you need for the next 24, 48 hours and making do for that amount of time and then going to the store again. I think we would end up wasting a lot more, particularly when we're talking about food, if we just simply shopped more often and shopped only for the things that we specifically need at that moment.
So I guess you're bringing up an interesting point, right? Because, and I kind of want to get into that, is, you know, what can we actually do, you know, practically to help change that perception and get the public to really, you know, be ingrained and have that the way that they can make a difference instead of just continuing to do what we've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, I would just offer what I just suggested, which is think about your immediate needs, and when you do go shopping, think about those purchases meeting only your immediate needs, not necessarily what you might want or need down the road, but what do you immediately need so that you're sure to consume it in a responsible way rather than waste it.
Great. And who else has any thoughts on and ideas on practical ways that we can change this perception?
I can jump in on that, Tim. You know, I think that a huge problem for us as a country is that when we go to the store and we're doing these big shopping trips, like what Sarah's talking about, I don't have children, but I come from a Sicilian family, and I know a lot about food and eating it and running a household. And I think that a problem that we don't really think about is that we are literally buying our trash. When we think about the things that we purchase, it's whatever's inside the wrapper or whatever we're going to be consuming or whatever we're going to be using around the house, and we don't think about the packaging that it comes in, or you know, what we're going to do with the bottle or the can when we're done with it. And if you think about literally throwing money away in this particular economic climate, that's not exactly something that most people would say they actively want to do, but they do it without realizing it. So I think if we thought a little bit more about what we were purchasing to begin with, at Earth 911 and in other circles, of course, we call that pre-cycling, you know, buying things that you know you can recycle or you could reuse, that might be an immediate step that we could take to reshaping the way we think about what we waste and all the money that we waste on our waste.
Awesome. And I think, Avital, you had something you wanted to chime in too?
Yeah, this is sort of what I cover as a journalist, is how to change the public perception. And not that particular topic, but my work sort of speaks to that in terms of, and it's just such a great question, because how to shift public perception is just such, again, complicated. This is all complicated, but my number one answer to that is just make it fun. People nowadays they don't need any more chores in their life. They don't need any more finger wagging at them, and they seem to get it from all sides, from every political spectrum, from every activist movement. So if we make it seem fun and cool and modern, and we give them information about great products that they can buy, great companies that are doing a lot of sustainability work to reduce waste, and it's fun stuff that they want to buy anyway, but they're just companies that are doing these things in a better way, then it's not going to feel like work. It's not going to feel like, oh, you know, I did this one green thing, so now I can sort of let go in this other realm. You have to build it into people's desires for their lifestyle and make it a positive association.
And Hope, what do you think about this?
You know, it's kind of interesting. I keep hearing about recycling. Are people as interested in it as they once were? And I think that's kind of been an issue for people. BBDO came out with a big press release on Earth Day, and it said young people, meaning like 19 to 22, don't recycle. They listed, you know, kind of at the bottom of their interest, the environment is gone. And then when you really delved into the report, you began to see that actually what it is that they use, say, for example, reusable water bottles way more than older groups do. They just tend to generate not as much trash as somebody older. So in a way, I kind of see being infused more into the society as opposed to, you know, here's your environmental checklist, you know, do you recycle? Boom, you're that. And so, Sara, you know, one thing I was wondering, you know, with you kind of being out there in the public and so forth and talking about this topic, whether you see it becoming more just the way we live as opposed to the recycle moment.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. You know, one of the things that I talk to people about a lot when I'm speaking to groups or something is to think in terms of the way not just one generation before us, but two generations before us lived. You know, when I think about my grandmother, she didn't use paper towels. When she cleaned her house, when she dried her dishes and dried her hands, she used cloth towels. And so we are very intentional in our household about not using paper towels and using cloth rags and cloth towels for all those things. We didn't use plastic Ziploc baggies every time we put a snack or sent a snack with our kids to school or to the park. We used reusable bags. And there are such cool products. I just grabbed these out of my kitchen a second ago. Etsy is this great online shop. We all know Etsy, right? And there's a woman on there who I just found. Her Etsy shop is called My Way Mama. She makes these things. They're shower caps for food, right? So instead of putting your leftovers in a plastic container, which is nasty because it's plastic and your food is touching it, but it allows you to just put it in a nice ceramic or glass bowl, and you put this over it instead of the regular old plastic wrap, which will be thrown away, which will never degrade, which will sit in a landfill for all of eternity, but this can be washed and used again and again. And these are the sorts of things that my grandmother, that people we all know at one time did, and unfortunately we've gotten out of the habit of doing that. What I'm seeing happening so much, though, is people are starting to come back to that, and they're understanding that, okay, this isn't throwing my life, my image, my lifestyle out the window and trying to become someone entirely new. This is like, okay, I can maintain a sense of cool, I can still be who I am, I can still be a busy mom, make all the things in my life work, but maybe I can make some of those small changes, and if it worked for people in other generations, and if it's working for other people around me, then I can make it work also. And I think it's, you know, it is, to an earlier point, it is about making it cool and making it hip and making it, you know, somehow attainable for people. But I think that that is happening. What I'm seeing from people across the country, and I'm sure you would all agree with me, is that that is slowly happening. And I think especially if we can think in terms of we're not the first people. We are not inventing the wheel here. People used to live this way. We just need to kind of get away from our disposable habits and get back to this a little bit.
So you bring up, I think, a great way that we can do this. And one of the things that's jumping into my head as I'm listening to this and thinking about it is, where do we make this change happen? I mean, is it as parents with our kids? Is it, you know, because as doing it as parents, is that going to be enough? Because if they don't have to do it at school, if they don't have to do it when they go into the workforce, you know, how are we seeing, you know, what can actually be done and where does it need to take place?
I mean, I'll be really quick so you can all jump in, but I would argue that all changes should first happen at home. It's happening in the schools. It's not happening on a mass scale in the schools, but the kids are learning a little bit about recycling. A lot of kids are taking those lessons and bringing them home and encouraging mom and dad to recycle at home, and mom and dad were not necessarily doing it before. So we know that those lessons are being taught in the schools. Whether it's happening on a mass scale with things actually being recycled and more responsible purchasing decisions being made in schools and stuff is probably a different discussion. But I would argue that it has to happen at home, and it has to happen with that youngest generation and ingraining it in them from a young age so that they grow up just expecting that of themselves and of the people around them.
And Avital, what about specifically, I think, with schools? What are you thinking can be done at the schools?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking at the higher education level. Every year at Sara Magazine, we put out an issue called Cool Schools, where we rank the greenest universities. And what we've found doing this for 5 years now is that high school students are actually starting to pick their colleges based not just on prestige or sports or social stuff, but also they're asking their high school counselors, are these colleges green? You know, how green are these colleges? And so you can really see that there is sort of this mental shift in the younger generation that this is entirely a lifestyle definition that people consider when they make huge life choices, like where to go to school. And then the colleges additionally are doing a lot to ramp up their curriculum in terms of making sure that they graduate an eco-literate alumni, which then creates a more, eco-positive society. And we're seeing the curriculum at colleges go up more and more people in colleges who maybe weren't considering an environmental career or green activism going into that because of an experience that they had in college with a professor or a class or a group that they joined. So it's definitely elementary school, it's definitely the younger ages with the parents, but it's also high school and increasingly it's college.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit. I think, Hope maybe. Do you have any thoughts on what you're seeing as far as where this should be impacted, and then we can kind of move off and I think get into different ways that we can make this happen?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting listening to Sara talk about, if we could live as we did 2 generations ago, they already this is a problem that already was solved once, let's put it that way. So it's not like we have to, get our greatest guys at NASA to go and take a look at this. I mean, there's a woman at Etsy doing these shower cap things. We almost can kind of read, the Farmer's Almanac from 1894 and we can kind of figure it all out. I mean, I will toss out one thing. I do think the cheapness of materials is one thing that encourages people to waste, I was at my sister's house, and we grew up with very conservative, environmental parents, and I spilled something, and I said, oh my gosh, and she got a whole paper towel roll, and I said, no, don't use that, use a cloth, and she was like, don't worry, they're so cheap at Sam's Town, I don't mind using them, And I thought, God, what a mindset. We devalued that. So I think Sara's right on, and I think the Sierra Club is right about their school guides. I think people are looking for those values. We just have to sort of go back to that mindset.
Well, excellent. Well, let's get into, I guess maybe Lisa, you can talk maybe about, what are some ways that we can optimize the recycling? I mean, getting beyond just the basics and,
Sure.
and tell us a little bit about what you see there.
Sure. I mean, I'm speaking practically as just one person, right? I think we've been talking a lot about trying to change some public awareness, which is awesome. But as one person, like, what can I do, right? And I think what I try to do is I try to think about everything I buy. Like Sara mentioned before, is I don't buy in bulk, and just think about really, do I need this before I buy it, and not hide behind recycling as a way to justify consumption. So, do I recycle? Absolutely. Do I look for ways to not recycle? Absolutely, right? So, I say no to plastic straws at the restaurant. Say no to plastic utensils, and just, there's that awesome social media graphic that came out that just said, wash the damn spoon, right? It takes so much oil and money to produce, and yeah, it's really cheap, but we only used to have metal utensils, so just do that. And then, just little things. I've talked about it on a Hangout before, but I actually label my trash can in my house landfill. So I think about everything that I throw in there. I think, is this something that I would take outside and throw in the yard? And if I wouldn't, is there some other way to do it? So those are just some things that I do. And as a daughter of a dentist, like, I don't chew gum, so I think it's, I was taught not to chew gum, right? But chewing gum, it's just, imagine a world where you didn't have to walk down the street and see gum waste and paper waste and the production that it took to take that waste. So that's just me as one person trying to kind of, make little tiny changes that hopefully kind of catch on.
No, I love that. I love some of those ideas, especially labeling it, landfill. I think that's really just drives it home personally to you. So That's great. But one of the things, and maybe Jennifer, you can talk about this, is, a lot of these things, when we're not buying in bulk and we're not, doing certain things, actually end up affecting us as far as money goes. And so what are some ways that we can look at the money side of this and actually go beyond one person and start activating?
Sure, Tim. I can jump in on that, and I've got some good beyond the bin recycling tips. I think that we should, just like Hope was saying, taking inspiration from older generations. The reason that Earth Day got started and the reason why we're having this conversation is because really passionate people got together and raised their voices, decades ago. And I think that there are a lot of amazing ways to do that now through social media, the purchasing power of our dollars. For example, I'm vegan, and so I don't buy meat because I don't, that's just something I don't want to support with my money, and that's cool if everybody else does, just my own personal thing, right? And so I think that if we vote with our dollars for products that do last longer, or that we can reuse, or that are made more sustainably, that we will drive, the capitalist society that we live in to shift that. It's amazing if we educate people, but if there aren't resources readily at hand for the general populace to use, then we're kind of spinning our wheels. And so I think that if we all make a more concerted effort to buy things, because we do need to buy them eventually, right? I mean, I believe in reuse and reducing, but you do need new things every now and then. But to buy things that stand for the ideals that we all believe in, then we'll really make a difference. And of course, since I'm from Earth Now and One, we know a lot of crazy things about recycling in general, and so the things that you do have to recycle or throw out at the end of the day, you had brought up going beyond the bin, Tim, and I love that concept, because everybody just thinks about what can go on their curbside, but there's actually a lot of other really cool ways to recycle, and one of the ways is through the mail. And that's the easiest thing ever, because all you have to do is just drop it in your mailbox, and the mailman comes every day anyways. And I'm sure everybody here is familiar with TerraCycle, and you can recycle candy wrappers and a lot of really interesting and strange Capri Sun pouches and all sorts of strange things through them. But you can also recycle things like, of course, cell phones or medical waste or e-waste in general, plastic. You can recycle all sorts of things through the mail. And so if you just want to do a little bit of research where you guys, wherever you live, you'll be able to find that information. Of course, earth901.com has a recycling directory. No, it's a shameless plug, of course, but you can do a lot. And there are even crazier things you can recycle. I know for a fact that San Francisco has a recycling option for mannequins. So if you have a mannequin lying around, you can not send that to the landfill or not even donate it. You can send it in. So again, just being creative and looking beyond the things that are just right there at your house, whatever goes in that curbside bin, we'd actually be able to make a pretty significant dent in our footprint.
Lisa, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. No, absolutely, Jennifer. I have a truck full of mannequins that I've got to do something with. No.
Yes, finally, we helped someone.
No. But you mentioned mailing, and I just am in love with this organization called Shoebox Recycling. I don't know if you've heard about it, but basically, you can take all of your old shoes and you put them in a box, and you call them, and they come pick them up, and they find someone that needs them, which is great. And so that's another way that I recycle is, I don't know, probably some other, philanthropic organizations near you all, but the American Kidney Fund comes around regularly, and so it kind of takes the, if people are just, overwhelmed by the thought of even taking their stuff somewhere, like you said, I'll just donate to Goodwill or somebody that'll come pick it up and just put it to better use. So, yeah.
And Avital, what about some other ways that we can look at recycling some things that we don't typically think of recycling?
Yeah, well, one thing that we really don't think about recycling is our clothes. I know a lot of people take their clothes to Goodwill or sell them at garage sales, but for stuff that just, isn't in good enough shape for either of those, cotton is actually one of the most recyclable substances. And there are textile recycling programs in many cities. I know San Francisco has bins that you can just take all of your old, socks with irreparable holes and jeans that are just too frayed for Goodwill, and take them to bins in San Francisco. And everything, every city has their own program, so I would encourage people to you can just Google clothes recycling in whatever your city's name is, and all these options will come up. But, just too many people say, Goodwill isn't going to want this, can't sell it at a garage sale, boom, in the landfill. And it's a shame, because it really is such a recyclable material. And then another thing that it's just kind of a tidal wave of waste is electronics. People don't have any idea how to recycle electronics. And I don't blame them, because there isn't enough information out there. But if you want to recycle electronics, there are tons of options to do so. There's a company here in San Francisco called ecoatm.com, where you literally it's like an ATM. You go and put in your old cell phone, and you literally get money for it. So that's one option. But again, Google is a great resource for just, how do I recycle my cell phone instead of just tossing it or letting it pile up in that, dust collecting pile in your closet. Recycle electronics, because when they go into the waste stream, they're very toxic. So.
And Sara, did you have an idea?
Yeah, I think that people do tend to forget that recyclables are a commodity. And so, to Avital's point, you put your cell phone in and you get money back. I mean, there is incentive besides just saving the environment and saving the landfills. But, to sort of play the very practical mom-family angle again, one thing that works really well for a lot of individuals and families especially is to host swaps. So you're tired of something in your house, you're tired of your old bed sheets, you're tired of your curtains, you're tired of your rugs, your books, your kids have outgrown a whole set of clothes, a whole set of toys, a whole set of books, whatever it is. So put together a swap and send it out over social media, send out of your closest friends, name a time and a location, everyone shows up with a bag of stuff that they're done with, and you just swap it out. And so somebody goes home with a new, but it's really an upcycled lamp or a rug or whatever. So instead of going to the store and buying a new set of sheets, you're buying essentially a recycled set of sheets, a set of sheets that already lived at someone else's home. It's much more responsible consumerism, and it's a very responsible way to deal with the things that we think we've grown tired of.
And Jennifer, did you have another idea too?
Yeah, I was just going to add in on the clothing recycling problem, which it's pretty amazing actually. Americans on average, each of us every year throws out about 65 pounds of textiles, which is really sad to me. And it's kind of neat because there are some larger retailers who are doing clothing recycling programs. So if you can't recycle clothing, through your curbside bin or through a program with your city, there are options such as H&M. They just launched a program where you can bring in bags of clothes. I think it's one bag at a time, but like a grocery bag. But it can be any brand, and then you get a discounted voucher for the next time you're in the store. I know that the North Face at all of their retail locations also launched clothing recycling programs. And then, of course, you have initiatives like Eileen Fisher, who's asking for all of their clothes back right now, which is really interesting, or Patagonia's famous campaign, "Don't buy this jacket," right? Go and buy reused. So the cool thing is that I think that clothing recycling is really coming along in terms of general accessibility to the public, where it can equate right now to maybe recycling plastic bags or newspapers or more common materials, but that is coming along. So if we all participate in it, I think more retailers and more communities will launch those programs.
And Hope, I think you had something you wanted to share?
Yeah, building on what Jennifer just said, one of the most exciting clothing sort of jumps I've seen lately has been a group, Flint and Tinder, on Kickstarter that has been raising money for the 10-year hoodie, is what they call it. And they raised almost $1 million. It just ended. And what they'll do is if your hoodie ever has a problem, they'll repair it. Not replace it, but repair it. And their idea is they're going to make such an amazing thing of clothing that you don't need to just, mail it back and they send you a new one. They're going to patch it up for you. So I do think, to your point, Jennifer, we're kind of starting to see some of that movement among manufacturers as well. Not this kind of disposable clothing sort of thing, and then encouraging people to bring things back.
Excellent, excellent. I'm like getting so many great ideas here that I hadn't even thought of or known before. So I can only imagine what everybody listening is. This is fantastic. I'm just loving it. So, but Avital, I think there is something that, as we hear some of these terms like recycling, upcycling, reusing, reducing, can you give us a little bit of clarity on what the differences are between those words?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can kind of think of it as a spectrum. And I would never, ever discourage anyone from recycling, but we have to realize that recycling does consume a lot of resources, too. It takes a lot to transport things to the recycling center and then to melt them down and transform them into something else. Sometimes that even happens in a different country, and then transport them back to the store to put them on the shelves where people can buy them and transport them home again. So if you think about recycling, it's actually a pretty intensive process. It's, of course, much better than not recycling at all and using virgin materials, but that is the recycling process. So if we can go a little bit down on the spectrum, there's also upcycling, which means making something out of something that already exists. You don't have to melt it down and reshape it to something new. You can actually just, like old maps, you can weave them into a basket and buy them as that. Usually upcycled things are a little bit craftier. And then reusing is pretty self-explanatory. It's taking something that you've already bought for a different purpose and repurposing it. So we have this fun section in the magazine, every issue. It's just called reuse, it's called repurpose. And we do things like make a purse out of an old umbrella or make a backpack out of an old blazer. So that's reusing. That's taking something with an original purpose for something else and giving it a new purpose. And then all the way on the best side of the spectrum is just reducing. If you don't need to have these materials in your home at all, if you don't need to buy them in the first place, just becoming more of a minimalist, which is becoming much cooler now. Minimalism is sort of the thing in general. Then that would, reducing is just sort of this empty space of more nothingness. So just those 4 words, recycling, which is great, but it is intensive. So if we can have those other options, and recycling is kind of the last ditch thing that we should do with our waste, then those are all good things to keep in mind.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I know I can't believe we've been on for over 30 minutes so far, and we're not quite ready to wrap yet. But unless if anybody else had any last thoughts on that, because I really think that gave a very clear explanation to everybody of those different terms. What I'd really like to do is have everybody here give just either one or a couple things that we can go out and start doing today to start making a difference and an impact. So maybe we could start with you, Sara, and you could give us what your top thing that we can just go start doing to make a difference today. I think you might have to unmute yourself, Sara.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yep. You know what? I'm still not hearing you, Sara. So maybe what we'll do is we'll jump to Jennifer with this and see if get your thoughts on what we can start doing today, and then we'll see if we can come back to Sara.
Sure, that sounds fine, Tim. You know, I'll reemphasize the pre-cycling angle that I talked about earlier, simply that, you know, if we had a better grasp on what we bought, we'd create less waste to begin with. And if you want to know more about what you can recycle where you live, of course, Earth No One can help you with that. But what I actually think would be a really fun project, and maybe a challenge that I will pose to everybody here at the group, is to do a waste audit of your house. And sometimes we think we're doing an amazing job, but if you look at maybe how often you're really taking out the trash or taking out the recycling, and really getting into it, kind of like doing a budget review, you know, where's your money really going? You can get a better handle on where you can improve. We actually had one of our writers do a 7-day trash fast, which you know, we're all experts here, and she really did some amazing preparations for it. And she ended up only creating after a week, it was about a spaghetti sauce jar size amount of trash that she couldn't find any recycling or reuse options for. It was really cool, and that was for herself and for you know, the person she lives with in her apartment. So it was really interesting, and I think that again, if everybody just stopped and took a minute to look at the waste they're really producing, you'd probably realize that there are some quick and simple fixes you could make to waste less and save more.
And Hope, let's hear what you're going to give us to start making a difference today.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I've really tried to do is I have a couple of kids who are both teenagers, and they've been indoctrinated. But when their friends come over, I try not to be too heavy-handed, but I'll try to say, oh, you know, Corwin, let's make sure you get that into the recycling bin, sweetheart. Let's not do the trash can, you know. So I think if we can kind of, through our kids, be inspirations to other people's kids, I think that can kind of get a ripple effect. And after this Google Hangout, I have to tell you, I'm going to like double down my efforts.
So just attending the Hangout is something that all of you, if you didn't get a chance to watch, share it with your friends, and it will have that ripple effect for everybody. So Lisa, how about you? What can you give us as something we could go out and start changing today?
Sure. I think we've all touched on the fact that we want to reduce our buying of stuff, right? But I think I would say kind of do an audit of what you actually need that comes to you that's free. Right? That we take advantage of the fact that we take a stack of napkins this fat, and we take 2 straws and plastic spoons and everything. So the stuff that we don't necessarily count because we didn't buy it, I would say think of that stuff. Do you need it, and do you have to take it? Because it's going to end up as trash.
Excellent, excellent. And Sara, do we have voice back for you? We're still not hearing you. And we did good the whole time. I don't know why the sound's not coming through. But if you want to type something in, we can actually read that up, and we'll go to Avital and give us your closing point of what we can start doing. And I think you might be on mute too.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I was just complimenting everyone on their wonderful suggestions, and there's just a litany of so many things that we can do. And what I'm going to mention isn't the end-all be-all, but I'm just going to mention it because it hasn't been really mentioned yet, which is composting. And if you think about it, it's basically recycling food waste. So we don't call it recycling, but it is recycling. And food waste is such a huge problem in America. I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but I know they're massive. And food waste actually, when it decomposes in the landfill, produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas 20 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And so in addition to the waste in the landfill, it's also a global warming problem that we have with food waste. So if we can, in San Francisco, we're lucky because San Francisco is a wonderful city for supporting composting efforts, and it's really easy here. But if your city doesn't have the same easy ways to compost, then I would say, ratchet up the activism in your city to get an easy composting program going, because my prediction is that in 5 or 10 years it's going to be as common as curbside recycling, but it just has to happen.
Excellent. And I think, Sara, we might have you back with sound.
Do you have me now?
We do. It's so good to hear your voice again.
You know, the earbuds, I just had to drop them. Well, so my tip would be, I agree completely with all of these things. We need to think about what we're buying, try to purchase less in all those ways. But I think the other really important thing that we need to think about is to not soapbox. As someone who grew up sort of a daughter of a generation of people who were looking to kick off this movement, my dad was one of those early pioneers in the natural foods movement, so I grew up in the super sustainable eco house in the sticks of Michigan. And as a result, I grew up with this mentality, but without the sort of soapboxing that I think often happens today. And it's one of what I believe, it's one of the biggest detriments to this movement, and especially amongst individuals in their neighborhoods. I see it with moms talking to other moms at schools, standing on the curb as you drag down your recycling bin, thinking you're doing such a great job because you have 2 recycling bins and only 1 bag of trash. But we don't know if all that stuff is actually being recycled. But it's sort of this holier-than-thou mentality that I think a lot of people take, and I think it's really, really dangerous. So I think the soapboxing has a tendency to get a little bit dangerous, and I think one of the best things we can do is to maintain a positive example of the changes that we can make, and to encourage those changes in our neighbors and in our friends, but in a very positive and helpful way, instead of in a negative soapboxy way.
Well, excellent. I want to thank all of you for joining us today and everybody watching. And as a tribute to Earth Day, the Terramar Project has donated parcels of the ocean to all the participants of this hangout. We'd like to invite everybody to tune into an exclusive hangout at the end of the series tomorrow, Friday, April 26th, to hear about what Terramar is doing to educate citizens of the ocean about the high seas. The Terramar Project exists to drive awareness and educate people about the high seas through citizenship, social engagement, and crowdfunding. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow, and I am going to display a link before we go up here, but you can find all the information on the National Geographic G+ event. And now I'll see, since I don't have anything to read and I can actually get this up, we'll see if we can get this going, hopefully. Oh, I am going to be a major fail here. I do not have the slide because it needs to be in a browser window. I should have tested this before. I apologize, I don't have it up, but we will display that on the information, but you can look up the Terramar Project on Google+ as well. So thank you all for joining us today. All of you in the Hangout and everybody watching, I really appreciate all the information that you shared.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, guys. Bye.
It was awesome.
Yay.